All right, so recently I've been slacking, I'll admit. So today, here's a few films that I've watched recently that I really haven't gotten a chance to review because, I'm a bum. I'm just going to go through what I added on my letterbox because, I'm pretentious like that. First, I want to talk about Over Your Dead Body starring Jason Segel and Samara Weaving, which I wish got a lot more love this year. And unfortunately, I wasn't able to see it in theaters because I don't even think it played after about 1 week. And I get it, Jason Segel, Jason Segel is a pretty big star, and I get it, Smart Weaving is still like up and coming, but I feel like she does have a niche audience in the horror space. And this was produced by 87 North, so I figured that it would have some type of backing, but whatever, a lot of films come and go now, but I'm happy I was able to watch this at home, and I think it was actually a really, really cool, like, fun experience. It was a lot more cynical and brutal than I thought it would be. It was bloody as hell. I thought that also Timothy Olyphant and Juliette Lewis were really good in the movie. They were, like, really cool goons, and the film has a pretty cool, simple premise. They're not working out, so they want to fucking kill each other, and I thought Jason Segel and Smart Weaving were so good in this movie, and listen, I thought they were a great pairing, and kind of sucks that we didn't, get more love for this movie. I gave it a 3.5 out of 5. I think it was a pretty solid movie. And then I saw Disclosure Day. I saw Disclosure Day on opening week, but I feel like I've just been like toying with my thoughts with it for so long. But I think that Disclosure Day is the most overhated yet most disappointing film of 2026 so far. And I say that because it still has that Spielberg magic. The camera blocking and just movements overall, all these techniques are enough to watch the film in general. I think that it's some of the most energy we've seen him give in a long time. But then you also have the opposite end of the spectrum where people will say, "Oh, this is Spielberg's best film in decades." I'm like, all right. Did you watch The Fablemans? I thought that was a lot better than this. And Ready Player One was a pretty fun movie too. But Spielberg still has it a lot in the tank. He has a lot of energy left. It doesn't feel like a director, toward the end of his career trying to make a big movie. It just feels like a director making a big movie. The film just has certain issues though. I love the performances. I love the cinematography. The score by John Williams was incredible. It was a very well made film, but it really falls short within the script because we spent about 2 to 2.5 hours trying to really, get into the meat of this, and they're building it up so much, only for it to be like, okay, like that was it, like that's what we were waiting for. It felt really underwhelming in the end, and I just wish that we got more. But like I said, it still has that Spielberg magic. You can't deny that. I think literally just his name being attached, I think it's a no-brainer to go watch it. Then I saw The Death of Robin Hood. I don't really know what to think about The Death of Robin Hood. I hate to use the B word because I love slow burns. I love movies that take their time and are a lot more thought provoking. But to be honest, The Death of Robin Hood is one of the most boring films I've seen in a while, especially one with Robin Hood in the title and an actor like Hugh Jackman and actress like Jodie Comer, who is they're both really good in this movie. They bounce off each other really well. I really like Hugh Jackman, in this role too. I think that it's a very interesting idea, and it's from the director of Pig and A Quiet Place Day One, who is a really good director, and they shot this on film. I thought that this, it was really promising in the first 20 to 30 minutes. Then after that, it just becomes a fucking snooze fest. I'm sorry, I hate saying that, but I fell asleep in the theater so many times throughout. And listen, I was well rested. I was fine. I had a pretty cool day before. Okay, maybe it was all the sushi I ate beforehand. Maybe I was full. But listen, man, the film could have been so much better. I like the premise of this, them going for something we haven't really seen from a Robin Hood story where he was essentially this villainous, I don't even want to say anti-hero. I just want to say more villainous, morally gray character who has a lot of regrets. He's toward the end of his life and he's trying to make amends. He has so many regrets for what he's done. He's very guilty, and these bloodlines come after him because he's killed their parents, their siblings, their cousins, which I wish that they delved into more. That's pretty much what the film is about, but we barely see that after the beginning. They kind of just, I don't want to say forget about it, but it just doesn't really become that much of a focus after a while. And I just think the film could have been so much better. I'm glad that they shot it on film. I'm glad that it felt like a Robert Eggers movie, even though I think that Robert Eggers probably would have done a much better job, probably a lot more interesting. But really, it's just the script. The script could have been better, and I don't think it had to be 2 hours if this was what it was about. And finally, for the latest releases, I did get to see Leviticus in the theater. I'm really happy about that. I saw that they were kind of struggling to add times to my theater. I kept checking it day and day, but I'm glad that it was at my theater. I hope that more people see it. You guys should go watch it. It really had an uphill battle, not just being a queer film, but being a low budget Australian horror film. It's probably really tough finding overseas distribution, but I'm really happy that studios like Neon are always focused on really backing smaller films like this, and I'm happy that I got to see it. I gave it a 4 out of 5. It could be lower or higher depending when I watch it again, but I think it's a really great film. Super strong performances. Such great performances from Joe Bird and Stacey Clausen, who I just think has so much chemistry. They bounce off each other really well in this film. I think that they really carry the film. It's pretty good, but their performances are, I think, why we're really watching and being so engaged throughout. That felt so real. I really felt that relationship and just, their internal struggles. It's not just a really good horror film with a cool premise. It's a story about family, relationships, internal desires, and trying to find your sexuality in a place that's not very accepting. And I like that the film felt kind of ambiguous in its time period because I was wondering, I'm like, okay, is this modern day or is this maybe an age where people were just less accepting of this community? Because then you look, they're not really using a lot of smartphones. I wasn't really sure what the time period was, and I like when films are like that. But yeah, I thought that this was a really cool debut from Adrian Chirella. The performances really carry it, and I hope that more people see this movie. I don't think it's up there with Obsession or Hokum. I do think I like it more than Backrooms, honestly, personally, but it's definitely going to be in my honorable mentions of all the films this year. And I really want to talk about some older films that I had the chance to rewatch again recently. First I want to talk about Sing Street. I think Sing Street is such a beautiful movie, such a feel-good film with actual good music, and it was like it came at a time in my life where I think I really needed this years ago in high school, and I always will revisit it. I think it just gets better with time. Then you have Widows, directed by Steve McQueen. This was only maybe my second or third time watching the film, since it came out in 2018, but I really do think it's one of the best heist films to come out of the 2010s and has such amazing performances from Viola Davis, Elizabeth Debicki, Michelle Rodriguez, Cynthia Erivo, and then you have the male performances from John Bernthal, Liam Neeson, Daniel Kaluuya, Colin Farrell, Brian Tyree Henry. Like the list really goes on. It's a crazy ensemble that kind of didn't get that much love when it came out. I think I did see people, they posted scenes of Daniel Kaluuya. He has some crazy moments in the movie. He's fucking despicable. Oh my god, this is the most despicable and evil you will ever see Daniel Kaluuya. And I think after rewatching again, I'm like, okay, I think this confirms Brian Tyree Henry will be a really good Two-Face. I'm not worried about that whatsoever. But the females in this movie, they carry it so well. I love Viola Davis. She's gonna do amazing no matter what. And I think Elizabeth Debicki, this might be one of my favorites from her. It wasn't just some big budget action or sci-fi film. It's a much more intimate crime thriller, and I think that she was great. And Michelle Rodriguez, bro, this is one of the best performances you'll see from her that's outside of Fast and Furious. Widows, great film. Probably my favorite Steve McQueen film. That's not, Shame, but I think it's amazing. Then I watched Super Dark Times from 2017, which, is a film that a lot of people don't know about. I think I did see a little bit of a cult following, but it's based in the 90s. It has that 90s nostalgia, but it's a lot more of that dark 90s nostalgia that we're not really used to seeing nowadays. And I think I love when films delve into stuff like that, where you can show this dark presence looming over this small town, and it really does feel like high school in a way. It feels uncomfortably like high school, and it just reminds me of my friends and a lot of those, uncomfortable feelings that you have growing up. And it's also fucking terrifying, and it's crazy how one of your best friends can become one of your worst enemies and so violent overnight. And last but not least, from the older films I've rewatched, we have Mean Creek. Came out in 2004. You have Rory Culkin and Josh Peck, who I don't know if people know about this movie. It kind of feels like one of the films that we should have watched in high school or middle school for PSAs. Like, when you watch those bad middle school like PSAs about bullying or like suicide and shit like that, I think that films like this or Speak really should be the films that we watch in high school or middle school, because they have a strong message about bullying and violence and trauma, but it doesn't really feel heavy-handed or cringe. At times it can be heavy-handed, but I will say this, it is a very raw portrayal of bullying and just the depiction of real life, I think. Also, for TV shows, recently I watched Your Friends and Neighbors, season 1 and 2. I binged that shit so fast. I watched Off Campus, I watched Widows, and then I watched Half Man. Widows and Half Man are some of the best fucking TV shows this year. All those TV shows are some of the best TV shows this year. Off Campus, man, that was an easy ass binge. No one fucking told me I would get hooked like that. Come on, guys.